I have this thing that happens. I'm often thinking in this last hour before this class, the things I want to share. And a lot of times my classes are affected by lyrics I hear in songs. In fact, I think that one of my quiet superpowers, we all have superpowers, is how much in my lifetime I've felt the relationship between lyrics and music, right? And because it's like, in a way, when if you could add music to poetry, right? And there are some great lyrics out there, it helps you hear a further dimension to it, which I actually think probably has a fair amount to do with the sound waves actually making the experience three-dimensional, right? So like honestly, if you think about, perhaps I would say, I've said this before in my life, like the greatest innovation for mind-body integration that human beings have ever created is probably music, right? Because it actually enters, you hear it, there's a cognitive processing, but often you want to move, often you feel different things, but it leads you more to action, or at least some of the time. But so what's funny about this evolution, I've taught whole classes even to you, but other times based on the lyrics of songs. And some of my best classes I've ever taught have been on a mishearing of song lyrics, where my mind is actually created, right, the lyric I wanted, as opposed to the lyric that was happening, or the one that the energy of the song made me feel. And so this morning I was thinking about one. So there are a couple of things I want multiple threads coming into what I'm going to try to say, right? Come on, Diane, right? Help me out, Diane, right? Which is like that there is, like, I'm very curious, something I've said to you before, and most of us are nearly in this category, and hopefully all will be eventually, is that true spiritual life, they say in India, can't begin until you're 60. Which I think is a curious utterance, right? But I kind of intuitively understand it. Like, it's like, yeah, I can kind of feel that. But part of the challenge, of course, is to stay curious. But what does curiosity mean? And one of the other, stop that thread, here comes another thread, right? Which is one of the hardest things about practicing by yourself, yoga, is actually not feeling too alone, because that's where all the self-judgment starts to happen. Like, I don't know what to do next. I don't know what I want to do next. All these things start to occur. Your mind starts to try to be in front of your practice, right? And thinks it's got to create something in order to practice. And so, so the idea that how do you stay curious about yoga? The last few weeks have been trying to introduce maybe a different conception than you've thought of about what is the ground and source of self-realization. How is the mind a hindrance and a deterrent from self-realization? What role does the body play in self-realization? These are all ways to stay curious about what's happening. Because at some level, right, one of the reasons why yoga is trying to get the mind to quiet down and realize the pure observer of samadhi, right, is so you can be less judgmental about the happening. Because the happening itself, your existence, your life force itself, doesn't need to be justified, right? It doesn't need reason. It actually is here. And even it coming through my body, and I know a lot of the bodies on this call, it hurts and is disorganized and stuff, but it's like there's something really important about getting to the place where you're just being part of what's happening, knowing that, thank goodness. I mean, I don't know if in Minnesota right now, although the leaves seem prematurely dry and without as much sugar, they're changing now. And they went from, like, usually there's more of a process to when they get drier. So what's weird about right now in Minnesota is that you can feel that they are dry and they're changing. And once they change, they're going faster, which kind of makes sense, right? Because this was a dry summer here. So the dryness in the change is actually more apparent sooner in the color change, right? Again, I've been paying attention to the happening and mostly feeling the happening. It's not like I can necessarily, by looking at the color of the trees, I can see that they're dry. But if I sit and look at them and feel it, then I go, wait, you're a little bit dry too soon, right? And then it's okay. It's just part of they're a symptom of the happening. All this about how do you stay curious to the happening. So back to a misguided lyric, okay? So I've been thinking about this song and I remember, this is how the true spiritual life thing starts at 60. I'm a big U2 fan and I have been for a long, long time. Okay, so I remember when Joshua Tree came out, the album, and some of you are old enough to, do you know this album? If you don't know the album, God help you, right? But whatever, it's your choice, whatever. You get to be whoever you are. You do you, right? But there's the first side of it where all the songs that got popular were, and then there's the back side of the album. And one of the songs was called In God's Country. Okay, and it's, you know, they're thought on some levels to be a Christian band, right? They're doing way more, I'd say they're more spiritual than Christian, but they're a hell of a band. If you don't know what's going on, especially what's coming out of Bono's head and Edge's guitar, you got to kind of start paying attention. But I remember back when it came out, when I was younger, it came out in 1984. So I would have been just graduating high school. And I remember like thinking, in God's country, come on, like don't put the religion in my face. I had this idea about it. And I find as I get closer to 60, I'm being less offended, or not offended, that's too strong a word, but thinking, oh, I can kind of see why they put it in those terms, even though I don't share the same type of faith that they have, right? But it's like, because if you think about God, the word God, it's an unbelievable simplification to part of the happening and appreciating the happening, right? So it's like, okay, I can kind of see why you might put it in those terms, because it allows a lot more minds to participate in what's happening, right? And so it's like, yeah. But now I kind of actually, this morning I was also thinking about the dude that got it, maybe the whole spiritual path reduced to the greatest messaging achievement in human history, trying to get the whole spiritual path reduced to one word. Right? I want to say, like, when you write messaging like I have to for Mind Body Solutions, it's stunning when the word love, right, is an unbelievable reduction of messaging as what is the fundamental path to spirituality, right? And it's like, wow, the dude got it down to one word. And it's like something, no matter what else I believe, it's kind of stunning. So in God's country, I thought the lyric was this, right? Up until I was just checking before the class. I thought it was, she stands to make a flame, right? Which I really like, because it makes me think of Uddiyana Bandha, which I might talk a little bit about today, as being the ignition of the flame, like the flame in a pilot light of a water heater. And she stands to make a flame, right? Well, it turns out, here's the lyric, funny, right? Naked flame, right? I have no idea, right? I thought it was make it flame, right? She stands with a naked flame. I stand with the sons of Cain, burned by the fire of love. So I was going to teach this class this morning about the ignition of standing without standing, right? That runs through our core. But now I'm stuck with the lyric naked flame, which I'm going to just disregard. And that she stands with the naked flame. I'm not even sure what the hell that means. However, right? Maybe it's a flame without any wood burning. I have no idea, right? So sit up straight and tall. So what if part of living in a body is the opportunity to inhabit a core channel or a core flame, right? And how would you stay curious about that? Metaphor actually expands the mind, right? It allows it to be able to realize more dimension, right? So I'm not asking you to imagine your spine is a flame. I'm actually wanting you to go towards the description of whatever it is you already are and feel it as a flame. There's a whole bunch of things about a flame that will be relevant to not only Tadasana, but to every yoga pose. You know, a flame can't happen without breath, right? Without oxygen, without an interplay. You know that typically a flame is deeper in color near its base and wobbles and changes and flits near the quote top. Suddenly that's sounding kind of interesting. The root, the trunk of a tree goes up and then it wobbles more near the top, right? So does a flame. So start to feel the trunk more. Remember, I've been trying to pass on the idea that pranic realization rewards structure. So that's part of why I want you to feel your feet on the floor or on your wheelchair, your sitting bones. I want you to feel the down exert the up. Because remember, a tree goes down into the earth as it flourishes and expands up. Leaves have a season, so the farthest parts you reach out into the world, right, are going to have a season. Last night I was with dinner with my 87-year-old mom, and she can't go to the outer edges to her leaves like she used to. And she's kind of losing track of the flame a little bit, understandable at 87. Hope I can do as well as she did. So now soften your temple, your jaw, the inside of your mouth. What's the sound or the lack of sound before the flame ignites? Once it ignites, you want it to have structure before it ignites. That's what asana is. One of the things I like thinking about the relationship between the flame and my breath is that if I don't breathe, if I don't use enough breath, the fire goes out. If I use too much breath at the very beginning of the flame, it goes out. It's how you put out a candle, right? So actually, even in your breathing, there's a balance of how to help the flame. Down, up, and now broaden, because now the flame's getting a little bigger, even though it comes from a root. As it travels through my body, it starts to flicker on the edges for sure. Even though it moves less near the base, it's still alive. Balance your head over your neck. So the flame dances in relationship to the currents of air in the room, right? So open to the whole room. The emptiness in the room isn't static either. Bring your hands into prayer if you can. Equalize the pressure to find symmetry. If you can't, feel each sitting bone. And let the space between the sitting bones be the base of the flame. The flame was already here. Let go of your day and prepare your mind to do yoga. Good, and then release. Take your sternum up towards your chin down over your sternum. Ground for the flame. Stay humble to the flame. Be lit by the flame. Fan the flame with your breath. Raise your head up with closed eyes. Open your eyes. So remember, if you're not breathing enough, the ember goes out too, right? But if you work too hard to strain to take the breath, that too will end up putting out the flame, right? So sit up again, lift your sternum, drop your chin. And whether it's through your nose or your mouth, find the breath within your body today that actually fans the flame, makes it stronger. What do you have to let go of? And what kind of effort is there? Breath is not without effort. It has effort in it. Raise your head up again, open your eyes. So although breath may be foundational to our particular existence, when it is not foundational for the flame at first, right? It will be necessary to perpetuate the flame. So sit up again. So there's an action way deep in your abdomen, way deep, that is thought to be an ignition, like the pilot light coming on. And there's a whole bunch of different ways to prepare for what it would be maybe called Uddiyana Bandha, but whatever the experience is. But part of it, I'm trying to tell you, is create the structure around it for the sitting bones and the down and the space between and the rise up. There's a slight moving back of the abdomen, your organs slightly back. and then a raise of your chest in order to get the flame to go up the chimney. So even if you can't hear or believe in the flame, make space for it. And once you have that level of grounding, it's incredibly grounding. Let your breath support it. Expand it into the wobble that's near the end of your inhalation. It's okay. The leaves are going to wobble on the tree. The branches are going to sway a little bit. And then on exhale, return to the solidity of the trunk of the tree, of the stillness of the base. Only to repeat, because the process keeps repeating. Good, and then release. So you've heard a lot of instructions from me, like, well, not a lot, but often you'll hear me reference the inner circumference of your rib cage, right? So what, okay, I get the words are harder. Help me out, Diane, right? I get it, right? So usually when I breathe, especially when I breathe through my mouth, I'm able to feel the outside of my rib cage and my breath better, right? The expansion starts happening out, right? So, right, there's a outside of your breath, right? And that's just notice that. So the idea of, or the experience of what I'm trying to get you to do at the sitting bones and lower abdomen is the idea of not stealing from the outside of your breath, but recognizing where the flame is from more and how it travels up through your spine. So there's a deepening, a grounding. So release again. So when you take a breath and you don't pay attention to the inside part of your breath as much, the experience of it, right? You're more like, mostly when I breathe through the day, I'm feeling more the outside of my rib cage, right? The engagement with the space outside of it. So just know it. Now sit up straight and tall and try to intuit or let into your brain so your mind can hear it, right? What I'm just calling the inner circumference of your rib cage. And don't think the inner circumference is something particular. It's deeper than that. It's an inward dimension. So when you try to feel, and I'm not saying don't feel the outer edge, your outer circumference of your rib cage. I'm saying when you add the instruction, feel the inner circumference of your rib cage, you're slightly more connected to the flame. Take a few more breaths. The chest is lifted, the chin is dropped to let the flame start to feel a definition so it can expand in asana. Good, and then raise your head up with closed eyes. For some of you that know pranayama a little bit better, you can kind of, when you're in that position, see why Ujjayi breath is so foundational, right? So the notion that you're going to move from inside to out in any movement, that you're trying to bring with you the fact that you were lit. I love my misinterpretation of in God's country. I like the idea of standing. She stands to make a flame, right? And that's going to be Tadasana. And I also, the thing I wanted to say is that Uddiyana Bandha is generally described in, just for illustrative purposes, it's just a description, as more feminine than male, right? It's a female tiger is how some of the ancient texts talk about it. It's seriously strong, right? It's kind of ferocious in its containment, right? So the idea of standing, so Tadasana is trying to be a reflection of this. So feel where your sitting bone's on, roll slightly the inner head of the femur bone, hit down through your heels, lift your chest, but do all this while your fingers are in the flame. So you're trying to take the flame outward into your actions. So Tadasana is a beginning attempt to make the flame go even more through the core channel. Now, you know, in my opinion, saving the world and human existence on this planet over time is going to require our feminine to come up and stand up more, right? Don't want to argue about that. Just want to tell you, I think it's true. And I think a lot of you know it's true too, right? And so how does that flame stand up, right? So that's part of what Tadasana is, right? And I've always thought that Tadasana was kind of a mountain and somehow mountains are more male somehow. I didn't even know I thought that. But I think I want to make sure that this mountain is more feminine, right? It's strong, vibrant, and giving. It's not just taking up space, it's supporting. Do this Tadasana from inside to out in a way that gives and doesn't just fill space. Notice your breath. Good, and then release. For whatever reason, when Richard Freeman said to me that Uddiyana Bandha, or the ignition at the base of the pilot light, is a female tiger, something completely changed, right? A feminine tiger, like all of a sudden I saw a whole big world. And so be grateful that people have been here before you, right? So now take your arms down to your side. So now we're gonna make it be more in asana, right? So my arms are stretching down, right? So for those of you that missed my bamboo plant, I brought it in, except I broke a great big branch off of it, damn it, as it came through the doorway. So by breaking, it's gonna have to grow, right? So I'm stretching down. So all of a sudden here comes more effort, right? And so as I want you to straighten your arms, hit your tricep towards your femur, towards your humerus bone, right? But I want to give you a softening instruction. So the upper arm is squeezing together so you can stretch down through your fingertips as you're hitting your sitting bones down and lifting your chest. Notice I've also made a big deal of trying to say, open your elbow pit like a blinking eye. Like be more aware. Make the mountain giving, not just exerting. Right? And that's how, when you teach a standing person, tell them to connect that awareness to the backs of their knees. Right? And you stay sturdy and full while there's other energy coming through you. Now hit down through your sitting bones. Ignite the pilot flame as you lift your chest. Open your palms, stretch down through your fingers. Lift under your collarbones. All this is will. But you're coming from the flame. Good, and then release. And of course, you know, there needs to be spaciousness, space and oxygen in the flame, right? So that old thing I like to do, I'm gonna have you like Open up some spaces, right, in your back, especially for us sitters, right? Lots of compression in the back, right? So I'm actually going to lean forward because I know what it is like. I know what the sensation of space that allows a better interplay with my breath. So I'm creating it. I'm like, oh, it's Monday. I better freaking wake up a little bit. So I'm rocking. I'm leaning forward this time. You can do it on your legs too. But I'm rocking from sitting bone to sitting bone because dang it, I want to roll and rock and roll this into existence the way music does. Right. So now I'm going to make it a little more yoga. I'm not just going from sitting bone to sitting bone. But as I go to a sitting bone to the left here, I'm very much connected to the left heel too. And then going back. So I'm actually starting to include. But it's not include, it's allow that there already was more going on here. Right. It's just my mind was late to the party. Right. So I'm going back and forth. Right. All those words can make you sleepy, huh? Right. And then I'm going to go back over. So we're just doing that warm up thing where we're actually in a body way, we're fanning the flame. Right. So I'm just going to keep waiting. I'm going to pause here and open my chest a little bit more because dang it, it kind of feels good. Right. What if you were led more in your asana practice by what feels good? You just have to, when things feel good, you need not to just fall into the same habit because they won't feel as good when you do it too much. And then going off to the side. So we're now trying to come off the solidity of our base where the flame starts, right? And we're trying to wake up, right, the energy on the outside. So when I reignite the flame, right, it actually comes in through my limbs, right, my whole body. So I'm going to do some weird stuff. I'm going to think, man, I want my fingertips in my poses today. So I'm going to like actually just go get some stimulation on my hands. I'm going to grab my wrist and go like, okay, because if I can get out to this last 5%, I'm out on the leaves, man. This is good. And then I'm going to I'm going to go like, hey, I need my brain to remember where the hell my body is, or my mind to remember. My brain's got it. I'm going to rub my hands together like, dang, that's okay. Right. And then I take that extra awareness on my hands. And because I have a spinal injury, I'm going to put it on my knees. I'm going to start to find that connection. Someone can feel your knees, which is both an advantage and a disadvantage to yoga, that you can feel the outsides of your knees. Right. That's both an advantage and a disadvantage. Right. Because the flame actually isn't coming from the outer body, although asana makes it seem that way. So I'm rocking back and forth. Right. We did these classes last couple of weeks. I'm going back. I'm still, trying to feel the stuff, changing the gravity, right? Letting things wobble without wobbling, right? All those things like moving. I'm going to lift up, set myself back down. I'm going to actually, and however you do it, make a minute workout here with your own decisions of motion, right? Like your own things that you want to wake up, right? So I'm actually wanting to lift off of my chair a little bit and launch myself because I know the ignition of that flame is an expansive thing, right? So this idea of expansion, but I got to keep my core energy, that flame, making it to my sides. Dang, my mind tries to limit everything, right? And then when you're done that, come back into center, stand, ground to make a flame. See if you can't be a better container for that flame. and then release. Of course, I want more spaces. I want the legs to go wide, right? It's not change. I don't have as much of a grounding on my foot pedals or on the floor, but that's okay, right? So now I'm making sure the base of my spine starts to open up, right? That's what standing poses do. So let me show you. I've done this last few weeks, but standing poses are going to change leg positions in relationship to your spine. So the energy can make it from the trunk to the leaves. And so as my legs are wide, right, I'm just going to do stuff like this. I'm getting to make sure that one of the functions, energetic functions of different standing poses is to make sure my spinal energy distributes, right? So I'm using rhythm here a little bit to get more active. So I'm going back and forth again, and then I'm going off again and off again. What a failure to think this is about your muscles. This is not about your muscles. Your muscles were about your spine. So I'm going back, so I can't back bend as well when my legs are wide. That's something to notice, right? Off again. So even here, I'm gonna start moving my arms a little bit more, right? And just try to get the shift to go with my arms, right? So I'm shifting the standing poses and moving my arms, right? So I'm doing the shift, the expression towards the branches and the leaves while changing the movement, right? Because that's all standing poses are going to do. And then come back to center Tadasana. Standing poses are going to take that flame of the bandhas, and it's going to actually make sure the arms and legs positions keep varying in order to distribute, right? So I want Tadasana again. Remember, the exhale goes back towards the flame. The inhale tries to distribute the flame, right? So you have this constant moving interplay, right? That's going back and forth. And it keeps going back and forth, even if you're overtly breathing. It's whether you can make your overt breath be congruent with the way prana flows. Legs wide again. So the thing about Iyengar yoga with all its precision is that it takes, so I'm sitting here just grounding for a second, it makes so much precision in a particular movement to try to land and honor the energy that's already here. But in so doing, it makes it look not as fluid, right? So the difference between I'm leaning over and taking my hand over my head bent, right? Or straight as I lean one direction, just notice the difference, or out to the side lazy, out to the side with my spine, out to this over my head bent, over my head straight. All these contrasts affect my spine, right? And so going up and over, and like let it be lazier, more overt, even though you're leaning, more out. Ooh, I make my shoulder cranky this weekend, right? Come back in, so I have to move slow there, right? So again, lazy as I'm leaning off center, lazy. Better this time. Body wakes up and improves, right? And then the other way again, I've changed gravity. Now I'm going to try to make it more obvious. I'm reaching out through the back leg, not using my arms yet. Right? I'm going to sit here for a second. So I'm curious, some of you that have trouble moving your arms, right? Why do you want to go to the arms so fast? There are about 3 people. I'm teasing right now. Okay. Oh, but I'm more of a human if I use my arms. I don't know. Right? I don't know. So I'm leaning over and changing position and watching what happens when I do it differently, right? A little lazy ass. So I'm taking this lazy spot here. I'm calling lazy. It's not really lazy. It's just empty, right? And I'm going to lift my chest. I'm trying to make it full while keeping my arm bent. Right? I could even put my hand on my head if I wanted to. How do I make that less lazy? Now I'm going to straighten it. Wait, what the hell now? I'm going to go back over here and go, wait, I want this space over here. I'm going to keep that space. Once I go lazy, I lose the back arm space, right? So I'm going back here. Now I'm going to go straight over, right? Now we're doing something more like Parsvakonasana, right? And then come here, right? So the idea of energizing from inside to out, from the flame to the limbs, right? So I'm coming over the other way, leaning over. Now how can I make this more energized? What happens in my spine, right? And then release, and then straighten the arm. And then release. Remember, we're trying to get the flame to go to the outer edges. Engage, straighten. Now take your arm here and let it just hang. Now energize it. Let it hang. Energize it. Good. And then come on back to center. So what's your method for energizing an outer movement? Sit up straight and tall. So I was just trying to show you some of mine. I almost always have to do it the spine, right? There's a reason why yogis from a long time ago didn't even do standing poses, because the core of the ignition was never the ability to move in funny places. It came from somewhere deeper. Stand to make a flame, right? So I don't mean stand up, I mean sit up, going back to the song. How is it that I see the flame? So I can tell you, if I try to feel the flame here and try to tell you that I know exactly how to get it to my fingertips, I would be lying. Sitting like this, and I stand to make a flame, I'm not sure how it goes to my fingertips. But that's not the point of this posture. The point of that posture comes in standing poses, right? Of how the flame travels. This is why we instruct the four corners of the compass, like beyond the fingertips, put the shoulder blade back towards the base of the spine, pressing down through this, going to call this my left arm, pressing down through my right hip and my right heel as I go beyond. So now, but as I give instructions on the outer body, that was never the point. The point was where your sitting bones are, how your spine activates, right? And I'm fine if this position is like this. It's gravy to have the arm out, right? Good. And then everyone take your arm down, put it on your chest. Now pull your chest open and extend. There's my shoulder up to my ear. Extend out from the shoulder as if your arm was straight up in the air. And then if you can, fill that space. What's funny, and then come on back. The way that we define control turns usually is on the outer edges. If you can get the arm to move, and we don't study how to activate the spine, right? So again, I'm trying to get everything going back to the midline, down, up, back out to the fingertips, right? Now, I'm gonna put my hand here. I'm gonna go, oh yeah, I remember. I'm gonna stand to make a flame, right? and then drop my shoulder and go beyond this way, right? Without my arm, and then with my arm. Good, and then release and come on back to center. So I've had some very interestingly acute doses of how the limbs are less important in yoga than you think, right? But my conception of self tends to be on whether I can pick up objects or straighten my arms and stuff. And one of the really, really intense doses of this came to me when I was teaching in 2003 or 4 at Walter Reed, in the height of so many vets coming back injured. And I was working with a guy that had 3 of his limbs amputated. Okay, so he only had 1 limb, right? So he couldn't really sit, but we propped him up sitting, right? And he didn't know. And this then continued on with a lot of my work with amputees, right, over the years. And it's kind of my approach, right? He did not know that the spine fires regardless of whether it's got its full expression. So his patterns, after he got blown up by an IED, right? His patterns of his spine were still there. And so he had been so acutely accepting the loss of sensation of his limbs that he was only falling in his spine, right? He was like, oh God, I got no way to express it, right? So we started to do some things like, I had another yoga teacher that was with me, put her foot into his sacrum, right? So he could feel what we just did, right? And so he could start to see that whether the leaves or the branches were there, right? So I'm feeling bad about this plant back here because this whole side of it snapped off, one of its 2 core things, right? But in order to want to keep this plant, I know I can trust it's going to grow here. I don't want it to lose its expression out here, right? Like I want it to keep knowing, and maybe that'll help it grow back into that space. Maybe this plant's like 25 years old, right? 26 years old, right? Maybe it doesn't need to be over here in physical presence. Not sure. Anyone hear me talking to them? Right? To being 60 and older, or being, sit up straight and tall. Where is it you think your asana needs to go? What do you think it is to stand and make a flame? Where do you think the center of your consciousness is? Don't access the flame of existence just from your mind. It'll look only like meditation then, which is good. But I want to be here, right? I do want to take up space. But can I do it? I'm going back and forth again. Can I do it more from the flame? Right? I don't know. Kind of worried if we just stand up to make the flame and then judge other people as not getting it, right? We're going to turn most of the people off. Does anyone think that if we made our Congress people practice something like Tai Chi all together, it would be slightly more sane in our governments? Yeah, right? Honest to God, there are a bunch of minds showing up in space. And in order to know where they are, they're having to fight. They're having to talk. They're having to posture. I'm taking my legs wide now. They're having to do all this stuff because they don't know where the flame comes from. What is the source of gratitude? Right? They don't know stuff. So maybe I should try to offer my service to every politician in my district to get them to actually fan their own flame. Right? What? I'd be thrown in jail. right? Sit up straight and tall. Of course, we need to twist a little bit, right? So there are different levels of twist, right? So if I just go up and then over, right? And then this one, that's a fine twist. In fact, I can feel like I maybe get farther because I'm pulling on my leg here. Let me show you what I'm doing. So I'm doing kind of a twist that's a little bit more on the outside of the body. So it engages where my ego is, which is my upper body. So, oh God, that must be success, right? If I can get this to open up, well, that is success, except it's not as connected to my sitting bones as I wanted. And then I'm going to come back. And then rather than take my arm to the outside of my leg, I'm just going to put it in the center. I'm going to grab my seat. I'm grabbing my cushion here, and I'm going to turn. And I'm going to look at the difference between the twists. Which one has the flame going down through the earth a little bit more and up through the core? Good, and then release. It doesn't mean that this one is better than this one. I'm going back to the farther one now. It means they both have to be here when I'm over here. I'm going here. Now I'm going here. And once I go to move, I collapse in my spine, right? My flame douses. So I have to find a way to be patient enough to get the flame to ignite. And I was trying to teach this the last couple of weeks, that there are different levels and ways to get the flame to come into a twist. And at the end, it still needs the air, right? So soften between your shoulder blades. Don't give up anywhere else. Fan the flame. Good, and then come on back. By the way, you don't just fan the flame by taking in and out oxygen, right? You fan the flame before the flame, right? Or you let the flame be before your breath, pardon me, before the breath, right? So I'm doing the more outward one. This is one where if I define myself in terms of how far I can twist, this is the one I can really track on the outside and look like I'm twisting from. Except where's my root system? Where's the earth? Because a lot of beginners and even not beginners will think the twist is, they want to define the twist in terms of their eyes and their head, and then come on back. Now, and so they'll, by the way, I've done that so bad, I've strained my eyeballs in twists, just so you know. Anyone's ever strained their eyeballs in a twist, you need to start again, right? So I'm grabbing the seat and I'm keeping more awareness in the midline as I twist. When I do that, my eyes don't want to leave the twist as much, and then come back. And now I'm going to do the one where I go farther. But now I'm going to make sure I'm staying centered in the flame as I go. And if I want to take my head farther, I can. Good, and then release. Back to the center. Dang it. I must have blabbed too much in the beginning. Good, and then up, over, around, deepen, ignite, Uddiyana Bandha. Right? Ignite the flame near the base, the flame that goes down to the earth, ignites at the base of your spine, and then hovers. So now your arms go out through your shoulders, and then your arms are down. Go into more of the room from the spine that's turning and squeezing its energy. Good, and then release. You know how hard it is to try to teach someone that's lost their limbs to try to say, hey, on this other level, it doesn't matter if your limb's there or not, right? When you go from the flame, the limb isn't as important. So now I'm going to do and get all that I can get, keeping with the flame so it stays grounded. less violent. Temper your effort with awareness of the flame. Good, and then come on back into center. So now I want to lengthen the spine again, because I want Shavasana to touch all of me. I want the spaciousness that the breath actually creates to be part of Shavasana without having to focus on my breath. Because in Shavasana, you're not focusing on your breath. Your breath ends up going shallow. If you focus on your breath, then you're doing pranayama. So I'm just trying to make the spaces in my back. Dang it. So even in this position, I'm going to remember, if you don't know the song, go listen to In God's Country, but and hear the wrong lyric like I've been for like since 1984. Right? I'm going to stand to make a flame here, even in this pose. While I'm doing that, I'm going to take in the beauty of my surroundings, even if it's not beautiful, because it's beautiful, actually. Good, and then come on back. Equal feet on the floor, sitting bones, hands on each leg, symmetry, balance the head over the neck, trying to prepare the spaces, right? Balance them out a little bit, and then find the position you want and the way you can take support from your chair. Keep it sensitive, however you do it. For me, a touchstone is my fingertips touching, but there are a lot of ways. Don't forget, your skin is way more subtly aware than your other parts of your body. It's a good way to increase sensitivity. Soften the jaw, around the eyes, the inside of the mouth. Good, and then start to gradually increase your breath. Thank your body as you come back. It holds everything. It makes your mind possible. It always came out of your body. When you're ready, open your eyes. If it's too bright, close them again. Then open them. And then, so like in the course of this class, so all of a sudden, I was able to feel like the mistake of how I was listening. Maybe when Like I thought maybe I was surprised by being wrong so for so long, like with naked flame. Maybe it's just the flame, right? All the pretense stripped down. Don't know what he was thinking. Don't know if he practiced yoga. I have no idea. Or if he does, right? She stands with a naked flame, meaning that the pretense has been dropped, right? Like, and so you hear it as like, wow, actually, that may be a closer state to innocence, right? So maybe that's what Pano was meaning, right? And that what is it for you to have the flame be innocent, right? As opposed to jaded by the 60, however many years you've been alive, right? Maybe you can separate your life from the flame, right? And see it differently. I don't know. I'm working on hope, you all, right? Not just for you, but for me. I'm working on hope. We need hope. All right. If you can, bring your hands together. If not, open with the center of your chest. Namaste. The spirit in me bows to the spirit in you.